it was really the perfect storm amidst a horrible storm. And yeah, we launched a Kickstarter in June. And with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, it raised over $360,000 in pre-orders.
Hey, my name is Felix Tiet. I'm the host of Shopify Masters, a weekly podcast powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, anywhere in between. Each week, we invite entrepreneurs like you to share what they've learned growing successful e-commerce businesses. In this episode, you'll learn the most important questions to ask to get unbiased feedback and uncover use cases for your product, the critical steps to launching a successful crowdfunding campaign, and where to go after a successful crowdfunding campaign to expand your customer base. Before our show, I wanted to chat about the Storefront Signage Maker. It's an easy way for any brick and mortar shop owners to let your customers know that you are open, available for curbside pickup, delivery, online information, and more. Customize any message you like, automatically create a QR code for your store, then print it off from home. It's easy and simple to use, no design experience required. Create a sign yourself at shopify.com/signage. Today I'm joined by Martika Wakeman from Sanakine. Sanakine is a refillable hand sanitizer dispenser made from recycled ocean-bound plastic and was started in May 2020 and based out of San Francisco, California. Welcome, Martika.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Felix.
Yeah, so we've had businesses that have come on the podcast that have talked about how they've pivoted and how they've adapted during the pandemic. But this is truly a business birthed out of the pandemic. So tell us more about the invention of the product and the business.
Yes, 100%. So it's an interesting story. My co-founder, Miles, he was worried about his grandmother who was in a nursing home in Oregon. And as we know, Oregon nursing homes were actually kind of the first place where COVID really hit hard, and that nursing home was going to run out of sanitizer. So he contacted a local distillery, got them sanitizer within a day, and it gave him the idea of really trying to connect more people the most in need with these distilleries. And there was this big issue, really a communication breakdown of distilleries getting 10,000 emails a day. We need sanitizer, we need sanitizer. And hospitals, nursing homes, homeless shelters, nonprofits of all kinds, they needed sanitizer the most to help the neediest. And they couldn't get through. And distilleries didn't know how to certify them, make sure that they were the real deal. So Miles put together with a team of volunteers a platform, a free platform to verify these nonprofits and those in most need, and then connect distilleries to them. So it was really amazing. And once the supply caught up with demand, Miles thought of the idea of creating a sanitizer that was actually sustainable. It is such an unsexy, wasteful industry. There's really no reason why it should be virgin single-use plastic for 2 ounces of sanitizer. And not only that, it's a bit doomsday. I think we're all tired of doomsday. And so to make something that didn't remind you of the fear, even subtly, or of the pandemic even, and was a cute, colorful, convenient way to keep safe and healthy and do so in a way that helps the planet. And he's invented Final Straw, which is the world's first reusable, collapsible straw. And that did amazingly on Kickstarter. It raised almost $2 million. And so he knew how to sort of test the desire for such a product, and had worked with ocean plastic before. He'd actually been to Haiti to a facility that employs people to collect ocean-bound plastic and recycle it, upcycle it is really the right term, and reuse it for our everyday needs. So it was really the perfect storm amidst a horrible storm. And we launched a Kickstarter in June, and that raised, with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, it raised over $360,000 in pre-orders.
That's amazing. And you had mentioned about how he was able to test the desire of the product and also probably similar learnings from the launch of Final Straw, which we've also had on the podcast. Is this through crowdfunding, or was there a stage or a process prior to kicking off the crowdfunding campaigns where he was able to determine that, okay, this is actually worth investing any more of my time or energy into?
Yeah, it's a great question. That's where I came in. I have a lot of experience with testing with users, understanding stakeholders, understanding the branding and their lifestyle, price points. And so we did a lot of testing with people in our community, and then incentivizing people in our network to go outside of our sort of circle and see what else was out there, what people's opinions were. What's interesting is I am 34, Miles and his other business partner at the time were 25. And then, of course, we had parents, relatives, friends. So we had an interesting look at what is the age group here, what's the price point, and understanding a little bit more about what people wanted. But the nice part about Kickstarter is if you have the right skills, which we had a really great collective skill set, you can put a campaign together with very little risk. And then you can, there's a bit of a mathematical equation, making sure that you're gaining interest and collecting emails so that when launch happens, you really get to go out of the gate with a bang, making sure that you're managing the community, growing the community, answering questions. There's a nice way that you can really just low risk test the market in real time and see if people want this product. And it proved that they did, which was really exciting for us, of course.
Yeah, so it sounds like different, at least two different stages to this, each one building more confidence in the kind of product market fit for what you guys are bringing to the market. And so I want to first talk about the early testing. You mentioned that you were able to test or maybe survey your community, your network. Is this something just like a personal network, or how do you even, if someone else has an idea, whether it be in the sustainability space or anywhere else, how would they even know how to access a group of people that you would value their feedback, or people that are actually in your potential market?
Yeah, it really comes down to putting yourself out there. So we did initial testing with our friends and family. Of course, you're going to get a lot of false positives because everyone's sort of like, yeah, of course we'll buy this. We'd love this. Great idea, honey. And so you want to really get away from your own community and your network. And that really becomes being part of other networks. I'm part of Women in CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility. I'm part of a few other networks. And so I have, those networks have no interest in lying or, being biased by any means. So I think that was really, really helpful. One of our business partners works at Spotify, and he was able to just ask his network, and we're talking just simply creating surveys that are asking the right questions. You're not leading the audience, asking the right questions, and then putting it on Slack channels. You can incentivize. Sometimes that makes a huge difference if you're not getting a big response. But I think because we're caring about the environment, we were helping create jobs with distilleries by buying our sanitizer from them. We had an emotional tie here. People were really happy to help us out. I also think it was, it's the middle of the pandemic, or the height of it, I guess, the beginning, where people are just sort of really extending themselves to help people. And we're really grateful for people's input. It was really helpful. And we could have made a lot of really, there were a lot of mistakes to be made in this startup. And I think there would be a lot more if we didn't have people give us their input.
Yeah, so it sounds like you have a lot of false positives. If you were to just ask your friends and family, they're all going to be encouraging and not give you kind of the raw truth. And then once you step outside your network, you can probably hear more of, there's no reason for them to like not try to hurt your feelings by telling you the truth. But do you ever bump up against people that just like see it as, oh, you're just trying to get information. It almost seems like a business coming in and trying to get, if someone calls you and asks you if you want to take a survey, you're probably likely to say no, or just it's kind of bothersome. How do you make sure that that's not the case when you are looking to test your market outside of your media network, outside your friends and family, but not become like maybe overbearing or intrusive when you're going around and trying to get feedback?
It's a really good question, because I think if I didn't believe in my product, I would have bumped up against that and felt like I was a nuisance, or the word you used, the word get. And I've always come from, hey, there are just billions of trillions of tons of trash in the ocean. This is an issue for everyone. I come from a strong background in sustainability. So for me, it's really, I know what is happening. I feel really privileged to be able to be helping. And it sounds silly at times. I've colleagues who are on the front lines of climate change, and it's incredible what they're doing. And at times, I guess I felt a little imposter syndrome of, oh, I'm just helping, make sanitizer dispensers more sustainable, which is felt a little silly at times. But the impact that we've had is millions of pounds of plastic taken from the ocean. We've employed people across different sectors, and it feels nice to also teach our audience and our customer about what sustainability really is, what carbon offsetting is, et cetera. And so I knew that from the beginning. And to me, I never worded anything in a give me information. I need to get this. It was always about, hey, we have this idea and it could work. And there's a lot of impact, positive impact that this could make right now. Before we go further, your input would be really valued. And, we're all ears. A lot of people would take the opportunity to call us up and tell me about their thoughts on it, where they'd want to buy it, what they think would work. And that's really valuable. And some really, really smart people just stopping their day and saying, well, actually, what have you thought about this, that, et cetera? And so I think it comes down to context. I think it always comes down to context, but I particularly, for anyone at that stage, make sure that you're wording things in a way that's thinking about the audience and what's in it for them. Because my audience truly feels like they're part of SantaKind, because they really are. We value their feedback, and we thank them. We keep them engaged and enrolled. And some people, of course, they were done then. Some people never purchased our product, I'm sure. But some people have been with us since day one, and they know that they're valued, and I think that's why they're still with us. So long story short, it's like, what's in it for them? And there definitely is something in it for them.
Yeah, I think what you're saying too is that you can either try to find what's in it for them, or if you have a product, you have a mission that is kind of bigger than you, that actually does encompass their best interests, right? Then it becomes way easier to, you almost don't have to build that context as much if you already have a mission from the start that is already inclusive of their interests, right? Rather than you can always try to find a way that, again, that helps them understand what's in it for them. But if you start off with a mission that is already in it for them, I think that definitely makes it easier as well. And you had mentioned that a big part of it too is asking the right questions and not leading. I think this is an important one too, because once you transition from talking to your friends and family and then you start talking to other people, I think you can still also have some false positives if you lead them with certain questions as well. Do you have any kind of lessons learned from this? Like, what are some of the most important questions that you got the answers to, especially early on, and were there certain ways to ask it to get the most maybe unbiased answers?
Yeah, I utilize a lot of online resources. I think that there's just so much information out there of what are good questions, what are bad questions. I have spent a lot of time doing stakeholder interviews. So I've made my fair share of mistakes leading the witness, so to speak. But I think that a lot of people could be convinced that it's a good product. And so making sure that you're not marketing during your questionnaire, you're really not marketing, and you're asking more of what's the problem, and is this a problem that's worth solving? Because for some people, exchanging their sanitizer, their plastic sanitizer, it's not a problem worth solving for them. They just simply don't care. Their problem is making, it's convenience. So they may be purchasing their sanitizer at a checkout line from who knows where. And that's okay. It's really important to know that. And I think not shying away from the questions that could be a little confronting, and leaning into the problem more so than the solution, because solutions, they may sound great, but oftentimes, and it's a Steve Jobs quote of your customer doesn't know what they want. He provided people with an iPhone. We didn't know we wanted an iPhone. We probably knew we wanted a few of the aspects, but we didn't know we wanted an iPhone, and look at us now. We can't live without it. So I think looking at the problem and solving from there, that's where you can get a lot more really, really helpful information.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is the approach that you have when you are surveying your market is not about, hey, will you buy my product? Will you buy this solution? But truly understand what their problem is and kind of working almost backwards to a solution. Then hopefully the solution that you work your way backwards to is the product that you had in mind or something similar to it. Do you have any examples of how you dig into these problems? Like the example that maybe the mission that you started off with, or you and Miles started off with, was this idea of sustainability. But you'd have customers that that's a nice to have, but it's not a big enough a problem for them. The bigger problem for them is convenience, or maybe not having a bunch of empty bottles around their home or something like that. How do you uncover those other use cases?
There's a lot of data out there that supports that people will pay more for sustainable products, up to 25%. I think it's probably even more. And each industry we've seen has sort of been taken to task with sustainability, and some are using it as an opportunity, and some are just complying with new regulations. So I think when we looked at what some of these use cases were and value propositions, sustainability was going to be a no-brainer for us. It came down to the other aspects. How high-end did we want to make it? How much did we really want to lean into sort of the eco-warrior? I think it's really important to make a list of who your audience is so you can understand your product market fit. If we're leaning into sustainability and that's a no-brainer for us, well, sustainability, there's a large spectrum of people that care about sustainability, and to different degrees. I think Swell water bottle is a great example of someone that we've really appreciated. They're sustainable. You're not using a plastic bottle when you're refilling a Swell water bottle, but you're also not focused on sustainability. You actually care about the look of your Swell water bottle almost as much as you care about the sustainability, if not more. And they really lean into that. They don't focus on sustainability all the time. We looked to them and thought, well, we can make new colors and we can lean into that aspect of their model, but we can lead with sustainability. And so what other brand would be a great example of that? And you can kind of list where people are on that spectrum and then compare it to the sanitizer industry or whatever industry you're looking into, and place yourself in a unique position and have that unique selling point for your brand. And that's where you can differentiate yourself and look to see if there's actually reason for you to carry on or not. Maybe there isn't. Maybe you need to pivot your idea.
Yeah, you mentioned Swell. I think I've had other sustainability brands on the podcast that have mentioned that for them, sustainability almost feels like it's a mission that they have internally, and that maybe when it comes to the larger market, it's almost like an add-on where the customers right now at least see sustainability as a nice to have, a bonus to have, but the core product still needs to serve like their main problem, which sometimes might not be, or a lot of times might not be sustainability focused. Do you see that kind of being the sentiment in the market right now, where the product itself has to have some other kind of core benefit to the customer, and then sustainability kind of pushes things over the edge? Or like what's your kind of take on the market right now for that?
I completely agree with that. I think at the end of the day, if your product doesn't serve a purpose, then sustainability doesn't really matter. There's only so much that a person is going to put up with for a product not working. I think we see that a lot in say, sustainable or eco-friendly beauty products. Like a woman she cares about a product being sustainable or better for her, or quote unquote clean. But if it doesn't work, she's not going to use it. That's the general sentiment. I think stasher bags, they're reusable silicone. They replaced our Ziploc bags.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a great example because they work so well, almost too well sometimes. You can't get them open, but they're wonderful. They're colorful and they lean into being sustainable. But at the end of the day, if they didn't work, women wouldn't switch those out, men wouldn't switch them out. So we were really clear that our product needed to work. It needed to add value. And that's where making our product convenient, we have a clip to our little mini. And so it's 1 ounce. It sprays 450 times before it needs to be refilled. And our refills come in aluminum, which is infinitely recyclable. So there really isn't there's no virgin plastic in our company. Our packaging's plastic free. We offset our shipping. So it's certainly in our DNA, but people like our product because they can clip it onto the outside of the bag. It looks cute. They can use it, and it's colorful. Especially a big one is with parents. So having their child remember to use sanitizer at school. We have mothers flooding our DMs or all sorts of feedback coming in saying, we put this on my son's bag and he just absolutely loves it. Which we knew there could be a possibility there, but we didn't expect kids to love it so much. And they really did. And being able to refill it, I think every time someone refills it, they feel good about the decision that they made. It's a little bit of a pat on the back from the planet. And people love that.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to talk a little bit about once you've identified that, okay, this is something worth, or once you and the team have identified this is something worth pursuing further, moving on to the kind of crowdfunding or the Kickstarter phase first. You mentioned putting together a campaign with very little risk if you kind of know what you're doing. I think that's kind of what you were saying. Can you say more about how you would approach this if someone else has an idea, they want to truly validate it, right? There's no better way to validate something unless someone puts money down for what you're selling them. What are some of the key things to get right to have a successful crowdfunding campaign?
A compelling video is really important, and that's what Miles is incredible at. His first video with Final Straw went completely viral. He spoke at the UN. They were on Shark Tank. It really took off. And so I think if you don't have that skill set, making sure that you hire someone or bring someone onto the team that can provide that. And I also think knowing who your audience is to the best of your ability, for instance, with these surveys or in other ways, you can make sure that it's speaking to them. We knew that people really cared about making a difference, about supporting distilleries, keeping the American jobs there, about the plastic problem. At the time, everyone was talking about how COVID-related PPE was causing a plastic crisis. Everyone's takeout food. So we leaned into those and made it a bit more emotional than I think most videos on Kickstarter are or can be. If we were to launch that same product right now, it would probably speak a little bit different. So I would say your gut instinct on how you want to do it and being yourself. I mean, people don't take a risk on a company. Just so everyone knows, if you invest in a Kickstarter product, you aren't guaranteed that you're going to get a product back. You are literally investing in a company and the company is saying, oh, thank you, we'll send you a product. But if that product never comes to fruition, or if it comes to fruition 3 years later, so be it. You can't get a refund on your investment. It is what it is. And so you're literally investing in an idea and in the team. So being yourself and being a human to people who are willing to take a risk on you, to believe in you, I think you owe it to that audience. And I think it lands a lot better because it's hard answering to a lot of people who sometimes don't even know that that's the way Kickstarter works. And they might say, hey, where's my product? And when you're a real person, it's a different conversation than when you're sort of pretending to be a different brand, a different entity, too professional, have it figured all out. You don't have it figured out, and they know that. so don't pretend. And I think it can all be done in that video. You can lay the foundation for that authenticity.
Yeah, that makes sense. So authenticity, you mentioned more the emotions and make a big difference. How much people can kind of Google Kickstarter and your brand to find the video, but give us an idea of like what were some in that short clip, the short, you don't have that much attention span from people that are browsing around. What are some kind of key things that you have to hit on to make sure that they understand like what they're investing in? You kind of, I'm assuming you spend some time laying out the problem that you're trying to solve, but then how much time do you spend on the actual solution that you have in mind?
Oh yeah, we already knew what the product was going to be. We had CADs of it, or a digital version. Miles made a version of it that we could use for pictures. So you're showing people what the product is going to be. That's really, really helpful. It's sort of like an ice cream brand. People want to see what the ice cream looks like before they buy it, and when they do, they're more they're more invested. I think that that's absolutely critical. Showing people with it how it could work. Obviously, one aspect is that we were using a spray sanitizer, which we believed was better than using a gel, which can kind of get all over the place. It's goopy, etc. You can't really spray it on anything. So we showed that a lot, and we had to kind of fake what it looked like to spray from our bottle because the initial didn't spray yet. So you want to be creative with really showing how this is going to work. And we took video from Miles's trip to Haiti, showed people picking up plastic. We showed distilleries and what it looked like to have people filling bottles with distillery sanitizer. So we really painted a picture, and then I think that really those are the key points. We have great music and keep it upbeat and moving quickly. Our attention span, as we all know, is just limited. So you really have to capture people initially and grab them in immediately.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes and let us know what you think or what you'd like to hear more of. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Awesome. Okay, so I think you mentioned earlier $350,000 raised from the crowdfunding campaigns. You mentioned too along this way about collecting emails and making sure that you're able to capture the people that are interested. What does that mean exactly? Tactically, how do you make sure that people that are interested in the product, if they're already backers, great. But are there other ways to capture anyone kind of outside that circle that aren't backers but still might be interested in the product?
Yep, you can run ads, and running ads, it's basically saying, we're going to launch, come join us, and simply a URL that allows people to enter their email address to be the first to know when launch happens. So you're building excitement, you're counting down the days, the hours, the minutes until launch, and then you really want to make sure that you're working with different organizations that we partnered with that work with just people who are Kickstarter backers. So they have their whole email list, and we'll send out emails saying, hey, this product, new on the market, it's going to come out tomorrow. They'll send those emails to the people interested. So the Kickstarter community is really small. A lot of backers, I cannot remember the stat off the top of my head, but most of the people on the platform have invested in multiple companies. So
Yeah.
you really want to lean into that and find the different organizations and partnerships that have that audience in their ecosystem. And we had thousands and thousands of emails to launch with, and even pushed back our campaign a few weeks because at the time, we had the civil unrest with Black Lives Matter, and we really wanted to keep the focus on that instead of adding any noise for something, comparatively as silly as a sustainable sanitizer. So we pushed back our campaign, continued to hold back on ads. We actually couldn't talk about sanitizer on Facebook. Facebook was not allowing it at the time. So anytime we talk about hand cleaner, antibacterial, we would get taken down, even if we didn't say the word sanitizer. So there was a lot of hurdles at the beginning, but I think it's worth making sure you hold back and really get those email addresses, and I'm using the word get, which I really shouldn't. If anyone is interested in launching a Kickstarter, the crucial aspect or mathematical equation to having a successful Kickstarter in the hundreds of thousands is creating that early excitement. And so in the first day, we reached over $80,000 in pre-orders or investment. And that then just starts to have the snowball effect. And you really need the snowball effect so that it carries on with its own momentum. Otherwise, it can be extremely expensive. So that is critical. You should wait and hold back and continue to earn those email addresses rather than trying to just meet an arbitrary deadline where you may not have enough emails to create that snowball effect.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about how I think the maybe incorrect approach to crowdfunding is that you're thinking of it as like a saving grace to like launch a company, but really it's like a tool to take to the next level, and you have to put in the work early on to the right ingredients, right input into having a successful campaign is that early traction, as you had mentioned, where almost everyone that I've had on the show that has had successful companies that have been started off the backs of a crowdfunding campaign have had, basically almost the entire campaign funded within the first 24 hours. So you had mentioned organizations you worked with. Do you remember anything you can mention off the top of your head that are Kickstarter-based agencies or organizations that you worked with to help assist with that launch?
Backer Camp, they were a wonderful one. I think they're the biggest one. So I would start there. It's definitely, they take their cut. It's definitely worth the cut. And they're wonderful. They will always be helpful and responsive from our experience.
Awesome. So once the campaign launched and it ran successfully, over $350,000 raised, what was the next step?
We closed our fundraiser with Kickstarter and moved everything to Indiegogo in early August. And we started working immediately on our CAD, on the product and just getting it into production. At the time, there was a massive aluminum shortage in the world, and all these giant corporations, a cat food company, Budweiser, whomever, they were purchasing all the aluminum. So we had a really hard time finding the right bottle size that we had promised. We also needed to buy our sanitizer. What was interesting was that the sanitizer we purchased from a distillery, thinking we were doing this great service to distilleries, it didn't smell as good as a sanitizer normally would because it's from a distillery. So that was an interesting setback. And then, of course, shipping delays. Onboarding to a shipping facility, that took extra time. There was a huge backup. So we didn't end up launching until we were really optimistic, and looking back, we should have just totally said it would be several more months. But we ended up launching the first week of December 2020.
Got it. Okay. So once the launch had happened, was there still a kind of a pent up demand for the product, or did you almost have to like build up the demand, the desire for the product again? Like, what was the marketing once you kind of moved off of crowdfunding?
Well, what was interesting was that we didn't have a ton of product in hand early. What would normally happen is if you place a big purchase order, you're going to get samples. You're going to get what you need to maybe send out to influencers, to take all your product photos. We didn't have the luxury of that, just due to this massive delay in shipping across the world. So when everyone was getting their product, we were getting our product too. So we leaned into PR instead of having incredible marketing. It was the ninth hour of your holiday shopping. And I think back then we almost already forget that people, Black Friday was huge, but then people are still shopping and they're used to shopping in person still as of 2020. And so when that was taken away from us and we all had to shop online for the most part, we weren't doing it soon enough. There were delays all across. We had the USPS defunding. It was a mess. So we leaned into PR and we had a few massive hits that were really incredible for our sales and building our customer base. We were in numerous Forbes, GQ, Men's Gear, Green Matter. And since then, we've continued to have wonderful PR, which has really been wonderful. It's been amazing for us.
Yeah. So was this all done in-house where you're reaching out and getting these massive hits through PR, or how were you able to, what was the process to getting the publications to write about you and the company?
We hired Be Influential PR, and they work with predominantly impact companies and a lot of Kickstarters. So we knew them from Final Straw. Miles knew the founder directly, and we can't say enough good things about them. They know their niche. They have wonderful relationships. They understand the startup life and how crazy it is, and they're just wonderful people. So we knew we were in good hands, and given we couldn't create a normal launch and it was so last minute, they came through tenfold.
That's awesome. And I want to talk a little bit about how you kind of explain your product to the market. We talked about this briefly before we went on air about this idea of like building trust, the brand trust around sustainability, and that you're kind of in it for the quote unquote right reasons versus I think the common term of greenwashing, where you're just kind of saying it and marketing it but not actually living it. How do you make sure that comes across and that your customers actually believe, especially if you're a brand new company that just has no kind of, I guess, there is some track record behind the scenes, but to a customer, they might not recognize a brand. They might not understand that you guys stand by what you're saying. How do you make sure you can build that brand trust?
Sure. I think this is really important, and it's not a phenomenon that happens overnight. There's no real one ad that's really going to do it, or one partnership, or, it just doesn't happen that way. We built an Instagram and email marketing funnel of just really explaining to people, what is carbon offsetting? Why does that matter with my shipment? We put inserts into everyone's package that explains our impact. So they might have noticed the impact when they came to our website and purchased a product, but we're reiterating it throughout the process for them. So they know how much plastic we've upcycled. They know the amount of donations we've made to nonprofits. They understand that there's no plastic in their shipping. We ask them to recycle. And our emails mirror that as well. So I think it's really, where do you add value for a customer? Because no one really knows what carbon offsetting is. I'd like you to know so that you choose my brand over the next that doesn't have carbon offset shipping. However, I really would rather you understand what carbon offsetting is in the first place and why it matters, how it can help. It isn't a perfect Band-Aid for climate change, but it certainly does help. And so we've taken the approach of educating our customer, adding value to them, giving them tips on how they can reduce their impact. Someone who's a total muse of mine is Blueland. They have an absolutely incredible Instagram account that has little funny tips and then some serious tips. And one thing that's important with explaining sustainability is making sure it doesn't feel like the end of the world, like we're all just, doomed. And a lot of the news can feel that way, can it? So you want to make sure that it's funny, it's entertaining, it's informative, it's optimistic, and it motivates someone to take the action rather than to feel fear. And I was really, really quick to say we are not doing any fear mongering, not the slightest bit. And I think to a fault, I almost could have leaned into, hey, let's, Omicron right now is a real issue. Let's keep each other safe. I almost shied away from that communications as well, because I don't want people to feel scared. It's no way to live. Yeah, I'm rambling a bit, but yeah.
Well, I think that this kind of leads into the next thought, which is around either existing companies, existing brands today, or a listener out there that's thinking about starting a company or a brand, and they want to be sustainable. They want it to be kind of one of their first, principles when they're starting their business, but how to do it in a way that is profitable. Like you had mentioned that you could probably squeeze more profits out by using fear tactics and scaring people into, buying your products, but you decide not to do that. So how do you kind of balance these two worlds between wanting to build a sustainable business but it also needs to be, the business itself needs to be sustainable too. It needs to be able to survive and thrive and grow.
You're always going to have to look at the numbers first and foremost and see what makes sense. There are a few certifications out there that you can get. Climate neutral is one. There's 1% for the planet. We're a member of that. 1% of our profits go towards environmental initiatives. It was founded by Patagonia. So there's different aspects, and each has their audience, their industry, and what makes sense for the business. So I would really make sure that you're creating the right fit for your product. Not every sustainable initiative is going to make sense for you. Donating sanitizer has been something that we've loved to do. We don't talk about it a lot or even enough, but it makes sense because we have a product that would help a lot of people and keep them safe. Donations sometimes don't work for other companies. If you're a predominantly focused tech company, or maybe you're a jewelry brand, maybe donations don't make sense, or they could if you find, if you're a jewelry company and you find women who are, an idea that comes to me is, formerly incarcerated women who want to apply for jobs. Give them wonderful jewelry that makes them feel amazing. It's really like what lights you up, because if something doesn't light you up, you're going to get really bored of it, just like your business. If your business overall doesn't light you up, it's going to be a slog, that's for sure. So it's something where I love going to a nonprofit Project Open Hand in San Francisco. We donated, I think, about 120 gallons of sanitizer, and it was so fun to be able to drive up and drop off a ton of boxes for them. They're so grateful. I have loved volunteering for them, and it meant a lot to me. So that I would say for anyone who wants to have an impact, first, amazing. You're great, and you should keep going, and you have a huge heart, and we need people like you. So keep going. And second, really take a moment to think about what's going to light you up and something that you can carry on and grow and be almost just as excited to grow as the company itself, whether it's totally within the value proposition of your product, or it's just you being responsible for the fact that, we're all extracting resources from this planet to make our products. So how are we being responsible for that? Which I think we all should be, and I think we all want to be.
Yeah, so I think one of the very interesting things about your story too is that there's opportunity that came and matched with you and your co-founder's background. You guys are striking while the iron is hot. How much attention are you paying to what the business will look like once, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon, but when the global pandemic is no longer the top news story, like how much of your focus, or is it a concern at all about how you want to either position a company or how you want to adapt as the world kind of changes a bit moving forward?
It's a great question. When we first started, at that time, when we first started, everyone thought that we were going to be in lockdown for like 6 weeks and this thing was going to be over and we'd all be fine, right? So as we kept going, there's bigger and bigger delays, shortages. We realized this was going to go on for a while. But again, people thought, okay, we're just going to go through the 2020 winter, spring, summer's going to come around and it's going to be gone. Here we are, it's December in 2021 and we're all sick, me included. And what we do know is people were using sanitizer before. It's a very seasonal product. So as we saw in the summer when things opened up, when people were moving around a bit more and felt safer to move around, they didn't, and when school was out, they didn't use sanitizer as much. And we saw that reflected in our sales. It wasn't surprising. And then as soon as fall started to hit, as soon as the school season was back in session, we're now seeing Omicron. Sales are really up. And it's a funny thing because, of course, we want the pandemic to be ending. For us, it's great to see the sales and be able to think about how we can better serve both our sustainability mission with having people buy a sustainable product rather than virgin plastic. But we also just get a lot of joy out of keeping people safe. So for us, when we think about after the pandemic is over, we know people are going to be using sanitizer more than they were before the pandemic. Probably not as much as that initial, summer of 2020. We're not worried about it. We think that this is going to be part of our everyday life going forward. Masks, I think that's maybe a different story, but sanitizer, I think, is a bit more bulletproof. I just think because we've attached ourselves to sustainability as well, we can expand our product line in ways that make sense with our core values rather than really trying to reach for other products. I mean, from sanitizer, you can kind of you see a lot of beauty lines having now a sanitizer, or Bath and, Body Works, that sort of type of stuff. They've got sanitizer. Everyone sort of has sanitizer as a complementary product to all their other staples, whereas sanitizer is our staple. So where we could go with it, I don't want to create a skincare line or beauty products. That's just not for me. But creating products that are more sustainable and solve our everyday issues, that's something I can totally hop on board with.
That makes sense. That's awesome. Exciting future for you guys. So Sanikind, SANIKIND.com is the website. And I'll leave you with this last question. What do you think has been the biggest lesson that you've learned over the first 1.5, 2 years of running this business that you're making sure to apply moving forward?
Oh my goodness. It's a big question because there is just so many things that I've learned. And I think if I were to encapsulate, you, as a founder, you make so many mistakes. Hindsight is definitely higher than 2020. I mean, if we could go back, my Lord. But I have a resilience that I really appreciate. It's grown. That muscle of resilience has grown. And I think I have a lot more compassion for making mistakes. It's almost like you get a boot camp in failing and getting back up really quickly. And where you find your resilience is a lot in people's feedback and reaching out to your community and focusing on the good and focusing on what's possible. I've always been an eternal optimist, and starting your own company is a boot camp in just testing that over and over and over. So, to anyone who's out there and has the wants to pursue their own business, I don't think you're going to have a better personal or professional opportunity to grow. It's amazing. So I say do it. You've got nothing to lose. I mean, you do, right? But but pretend like you don't and just go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your experience and stories, Martika.
Thank you so much, Felix. This is amazing. I think, to be able to come on this podcast is such an honor. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Shopify Masters, the e-commerce podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs powered by Shopify.